Supreme Court Justice. My name is Thurgood Marshall. Court's in session. I am a Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Today, as you journey through time, you will learn the classifications and distinctions based on race or color have no moral or legal validity in our society. They are contrary to our Constitution and laws in recognizing the humanity of our fellow beings. We pay ourselves the highest tribute. My journey to being appointed to the highest court in the land by President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1967 began on July 2nd, 1908 in Baltimore, Maryland, the day of my birth. My father was the grandson of a slave. My mother was a kindergarten teacher. I remember my father would stop by the local courthouse before he came home from work and listen to court cases. He would then come home and rehash the arguments he heard with my brother and me. My father, my brother, and I would argue the cases for long times at the dinner table, 5 or 7 days out of the week. I attended the Baltimore Colored High and Training School and was a member of the debate team. One of my greatest accomplishments in high school was memorizing the United States Constitution, which was my teacher's punishment for me misbehaving. She didn't know at the time that this punishment would secure my destiny. After graduating from high school, I attended Lincoln University, a historically black college in Pennsylvania. After graduating, I applied to the University of Maryland Law School. Even though I was overqualified, I was not accepted because I was black. This was my first experience with discrimination in education. So instead of Maryland, I attended the Howard University School of Law in Washington, D.C., which is also a historically black school. I graduated magna cum laude from Howard. After graduating, I opened a law practice in nearby Baltimore. After not getting enough cases, I soon took a job as an attorney at the Baltimore branch of the NAACP, the National Association of Advancement of Colored People. As an attorney for the NAACP, I had many discrimination cases that I presented to the Supreme Court as a young man. My most famous case was the 1954 Brown versus the Board of Education. I won this case for some black parents that ended school segregation in Topeka, Kansas. And this eventually led to the end of segregated schools across the United States. While serving on the Supreme Court, I was a strong supporter of constitutional protections of individual rights, especially the rights of criminal suspects. One is innocent until proven guilty, regardless of race, creed, or color. I retired from the highest court in 1991 after 24 years of service to our country. And let me close. I am a strong believer in America. We must all be a part of supporting equal rights for all. When you see wrong or inequality or injustice, speak out, because this is our country. This is our democracy. Make it, protect it, pass it on. Our court session has ended.
Thank you, Justice Marshall. And now we're going to step back a little further in time, and we're going to meet someone else who has helped build this country.
Good afternoon. My name is Dorothy Height, and I was born in Richmond, Virginia. That's about 2 hours from here. But my life wasn't always easy. No, indeed, it was not. As a matter of fact, when I was admitted to Barnard College in 1929, they denied my entrance because they had this unwritten policy that they will only admit 2 Negroes per year. But I didn't let that stop me, because I went on and enrolled in New York University and got my undergraduate degree in 1932, and then I went on to postgraduate school and got more degrees. So my message to you is this: don't let anything stop you from bettering yourself, because I didn't. Then I went on to pick up some causes like the African American Women for Freedom, and of course, the National Council for Negro Women. So I'm going to give you some more advice. Find a cause, join an organization, and help somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Height. And now we're going to walk back just a little bit further, and I'd like to introduce you to our next guest.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Lucretia Mott. I was born Lucretia Coffin in 1793 in Nantucket, Massachusetts. At the age of 13, I was attended the Nine Panther School in Dutchess County, New York, which is where I met my husband, James Mott. As time went on, we became very much involved in the abolitionist movement. As Quakers, we believe in simplicity, peace, integrity, and definitely equality of all human beings, considering slavery sinful. We, along with many other Quakers, refused to use cotton cloth, sugar cane, and other slavery-produced goods. I helped found the New York American Anti-Slavery Society, and then, along with other white and Negro women in Philadelphia, founded the Philadelphia Female Anti-Slavery Association. We oppose both slavery and racism. With my close ties to the Negro community in Philadelphia, I have met William Still, who records the stories of fugitives who are fortunate and cunning enough to make it to his stop on the Underground Railroad. I know Harriet Tubman, and I often help her find living quarters and employment because she needs money to do her trips back and forth to Dorchester County, Maryland. The Underground Railroad is helping fugitives get from Maryland and Baltimore to Philadelphia, to New York, or to Boston, Syracuse, Rochester, and on to Canada. It's my pleasure to see you here this afternoon in this wonderful sanctuary filled with artifacts, histories, and the influences of Africans who were brought here to North America with disdain and in shackles against their will for the profit of those who stole them.
Thank you for coming, time travelers. My name is Frederick Douglass. I was born February 1818 in Cordova, Maryland, commonly known as a town next to Easton, Maryland. I don't officially know my birthday, so I deemed it February 14th. So happy Valentine's Day and belated birthday to me. As a very young boy, I was separated from my mother and as well from my grandmother. So the odds were stacked against me from a very, very small age. I taught myself to read and write, and which over the years made me a great orator, which shocked a lot of people when they heard me speak and write and also read my work in my autobiography, which is more commonly known. Excuse me. I am most recognized for a lot of my abolition work. I did promote a more equality in terms of gender, race, and nationalities from African Americans, whites, and women, and I also had presence in the suffrage movement as well. But thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoy.
Mr. Douglass is going to lead you through your journey in time as you walk through and hear all of the stories of the great people who have worked very hard to get us where we are today. But wait, I think I'm hearing something. I'm not quite sure what that is, but it sounds like someone's coming. Who is it? Look, do you hear something? I think I hear something. Who was that? I don't know who that was, but let's go find out. Frederick, would you please take them on their journey? Would everybody rise and follow Mr. Douglass?
My name is Araminta Minty Ross, but you all know me as Harriet Tubman. I was born a slave on the eastern shore of Maryland. Worked right hard, too. Life as a slave was real hard. See this? I had to pick a couple of these each day. If I didn't, I could be beaten, I could be sold far, far away from my family. Sometimes master sent me into town. I went in one day with a slave. He got it in his head to run to freedom. The overseer saw him, picked up one of those iron weights, and threw it all the way across the floor. You see this mark right here? Hit me right in the head. Sometimes now I get blackouts, I get headaches. But all the while, I started thinking. I started listening to what God was telling me to be free. So I decided I was going to be free. I couldn't take Mama and Daddy. I couldn't take any other family with me, but I had to go. I relied on some of my friends. I think you've met them. Frederick Douglass and Lucretia Coffin. We went through the woods. We went into homes. We went into passages. And we relied on people to help us out along the way. They had lanterns in the windows so that way we knew whether they were friends or not. And sometimes they hid us in secret passages like this, where we stayed so that the slave catchers couldn't catch us and send us back to slavery. So when it came time for the Civil War, I signed up. I was a spy. I helped Colonel John Montgomery with the 2nd Black Regiment from South Carolina. We located Confederate strongholds, burnt their food, burnt their weapons, and burnt their cotton. Think about 19 trips to Maryland, freed about 300 slaves, and all the time that I was in the Civil War, freed about 700 slaves. So I think I did pretty good for myself and my people. I think I hear somebody else coming.
Hut!
Good afternoon. I want to thank and welcome everyone for coming today. My name is Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. I was the first colored general in the Air Force. I followed in my father's footsteps. He was the first colored general in the United States Army. I served in the United States Army and Air Force from 1936 to 1970. I am from Washington, D.C. At the age of 13, a barnstorming unit came through and the pilot gave me a ride in his plane. That's when I decided to become a pilot. I went to the University of Chicago. When I left Chicago, I went to West Point. West Point was a very lonely time in my life. None of the other cadets would talk to me. They would not eat with me, and I had to spend most of my time alone. But that just made me determined to complete the academy and do the best that I could. I graduated 5th in a class of 247. I got assigned to the 24th Black Military Unit because they would not allow colored to order white troops around. I also went to the Tuskegee Airfield where I was one of 5 people who graduated and got their wings. We flew escorts for the bomber service for the bombers during World War II. Oh, by the way, I fought in World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War. I died July 4th at the age of 89. I am buried in Arlington Cemetery.
In time travels, you can stand and we will take another journey.
The village of Jamaica. Natural resources from the land, from the earth. Over here we have this chair that is all beaded, all beads. And behind in this corner we have pipes. They are African pipes, as well as the ceremonial mask and garb, 150 years old. I know you don't have clothes 150 years old. Over here, come to the lovely land of Jamaica, we have homemade dolls and jewelry. The picture on the wall is Jamaica, where they are all interacting. And when you glance this way, you'll see lovely, beautiful clothes, fabric from Guyana. We have hand-weaved vessels from Ethiopia. Nigerian leather. Isn't it beautiful? Umbrellas, all handmade. Sculptures. When they had a funeral, this is what you would see at the wake. This is the casket, handmade in Africa, Cameroon. When you glance over here to this corner, you come to Ethiopia, where we have stringed instruments, harps. All of these are instruments placed on the casket. This is another casket. We have a chair here, all handmade. Everything in this room is made by hand. And look at the door. The Bakaba door. Not like the doors you purchase at Lowe's, manufactured and produced by masses. This is handmade, hand-carved. And this is the village from South Africa to Jamaica. I want Jesus, you can walk this way, to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me all along I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me all along.
Good afternoon. My name is Rosa Parks. You might know me as the face of the modern civil rights movement. My story began a while ago. I was born in Pine Level, Alabama. Spent time there with my mother, my brother, and my maternal grandparents who were born slaves. So I knew all about segregation. But in 1932, I married the love of my life, Raymond Parks, and we moved to Montgomery, Alabama. We were very involved in the NAACP. I was the secretary of the local chapter, and he was an activist. It was December 1st, 1955. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was coming home from my job at the local department store where I was a seamstress. And like every day, we had to ride in the back of the bus. You see, Jim Crow was alive and well then, and there was the white section and there was the colored section. So I would board the bus in the front and pay, and then have to get off, walk around to the back, and get back on the bus and sit behind the white line, which I did every day. This day, I sat in the front row of the colored section though, and the bus filled up pretty quick. So the next thing I knew, the bus driver was telling me and a few other people to get up and give our seats to the white man. Well, you know, I got tired. And I don't mean I was tired from a hard day's work, because I'm always tired from a hard day's work. But I was sick and tired of this Jim Crow, sick and tired of racism. So I decided I wasn't getting up that day. I was gonna sit there, and I did. Now, me and this bus driver had a little history too, because I had been on his bus before and given him a hard time, so he thought before. So I wasn't getting up, and you know, he had me arrested. So 4 days later, I'm sitting in the jail, and I get out. It was December the 5th. That was the day that everybody, all the blacks, which we were known as colored then, decided we weren't going to take it anymore. And we boycotted the bus system. We did not ride that bus for 381 days. That was more than a year. We broke them. But it broke me and Raymond too, because I lost my job behind that, and so did he. He was a barber, and he was a good one. So we had to move, and we moved to Detroit, Michigan, where my brother was already living. And the blessing in that came in that I began working for Representative John Conyers. I worked for him for 20 years. And during that time, the love of my life died. But, not to be forgotten, a friend of mine and I formed the Raymond and Rosa Parks Institute, where we taught young people about the civil rights movement. We taught them about the Underground Railroad, and we invited civil rights leaders to come to Detroit and talk to young people, because we knew that young people were our future and they were the catalyst for change. During my lifetime, I was awarded several prestigious honors. My favorite, however, was that of the Spingarn Medal, and that's the highest award that the NAACP bestows upon people. Second to that, President Bill Clinton awarded me with the Medal of Honor, and I was recognized at the Kennedy Center Honors. In 2005, I passed away, but not before I left a legacy with my institute and the path roads to freedom.
My name is Mary Church Tyrell, and I was born on September 23rd, 1863 in Memphis, Tennessee. My parents were former slaves, and after slavery, they were able to start their own businesses, and they did very well for themselves. My father was able to send me to school, and I really am excited about that because I wanted to teach. So I went to Oberlin College in Ohio, where I taught, where I received a degree, a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. After leaving Oberlin, I came to Washington, D.C. to teach. I taught at the M Street Colored School in Washington, D.C., where I met many people. Some of those people were very, very, very good teachers. And one person in particular, a language teacher named Robert Tyrell, would be the man I would marry. After I married Robert, I had to stop teaching. And this was because teachers in Washington, D.C., if you were a woman and you got married, you could not teach. So I had to stop. But that didn't stop my work with education. I was elected the first black woman to be on the D.C. Board of Education. After that, I also worked with different organizations, one being the National Association of Colored Women, and I became the president, and we worked on improving things for children, like daycares and kindergartens. So, what we did was, we kept focusing on making things better. Another thing that was really important to me was trying to end segregation. In DC at this time, things were segregated. So going to the theater with my children was a situation where usually if you go, many times you are turned away at the door because you cannot sit in the general area. You had to sit up in the balcony. And with little children with you, a lot of times they don't understand. And that used to make me very upset as a mother, just to see my children so upset and dejected because of this segregation. So I decided with a few friends, we started making picket signs, and we decided to go to Thompson's Restaurant, which is in Washington, D.C., and we wanted to be served. This was a restaurant that was segregated, but we went there to be served. Once we got there, they would not serve us. So we left, but it didn't stop us. We went straight to the courts in DC and we filed a lawsuit. And for about 3 years, we fought hard and long. We picketed a lot of other restaurants. And then eventually in 1953, the courts ruled in our favor and all of the DC restaurants were declared desegregated. So this was a great opportunity, this is a great victory that segregation ended after we did this. And that's my motto that I always remember, and I believe is that we must keep on going, keep on insisting, and keep on fighting injustice.
I crack up every time I see that name of the building across the street. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Ronesville, Maryland, which is in Cecil County. I was born on April 4th, 1911. I had 3 sisters, my father Elwood and my mother Josephine. My father worked as a construction worker on the Conowingo Dam, and one day on his way home from work he was hit by a drunk driver and killed. So as the only male in the house, I had to step up and take over in my dad's place. And so I went to school. I was determined I was going to finish high school, and then I got the opportunity to go off to college. I attended Bowie State University, and got my teaching certificate. And I went back to Cecil County and taught for a while. And I met my first wife, Cordelia. We had 2 children. Later, she died of cancer. And I was left as a single father. Well, lo and behold, one day, one of my colleagues from Bowie State invited me to Sandy Spring, Maryland, where we attended Sharp Street United Methodist Church, which is the oldest African American church in Montgomery County, and it was the hub of the community. And I got here and I thought this was the most beautiful place on earth, and decided to stay. So shortly thereafter, I was able to teach right here in this 2-room schoolhouse, which is right around the corner, where most of the kids, or most of the African American kids at this time, attended school, because this was during the time of segregation. Stepped up and they opened this building, which used to be a school for colored children, as we called them back then, or African American students, where I was then promoted to principal. We had great celebrations, we had a dedicated staff. Even though we had hand-me-down books, we still created a great learning environment for our students, and many of them still are around in the community today. So after, I also fought in World War II and came home and remarried, and together we had 9 children. We love children. So to supplement my income, because teachers didn't make a lot of money then, just like they don't now, I ran the recreation department, so we had a teen club, we had senior programs where we had lunch, served lunch every day, and had a place for the older folks in our community to come together. Children played basketball, learned how to skate across in the auditorium in the center. And I spent the rest of my life working as the director of the center. In 1996, I passed away at the age of 86. And so I was an educator, a teacher, a principal. I worked with the Civic Association and Habitat for Humanity, among other organizations.
Mm-hmm.
The son of Ross Batty, for whom that school and he works for the Montgomery County Public Schools and the Board of Education in Northville as what?
The Director of Professional Learning and Equity.
So,
Good evening. I'm Martha Howard Murphy. I was born right here in Laytonville, Maryland in 1846. I'm the daughter of 2 slaves. My father, Enoch George Howard, was a slave on the Samuel Griffith farm, and my mother, Harriet Lee, was a slave on the Samuel Gaither farm in Laytonville. My father was given a tract of land to farm, and he was allowed to take his produce to Baltimore to sell, and he was allowed to keep his money. My father was freed through Romanian mission in 1851. At that time, he was able to purchase my mother out of slavery for 25 cents. My mother purchased me, my brother Greenberry, and my brother John Henry out of slavery for 25 cents each as well. My sister Mary Alice was born free. The stipulation of my bill of sale was that my mother would own me until I was the age of 30. Due to my father's business ties in Baltimore, I went up and tended to a sick family friend. There I met the love of my life, John Henry Murphy. Together, John Henry Murphy and I took $200 from my father, and we started the Afro-American newspaper, which is still in circulation since 1892. It was still family-owned and operated to this day. I was able to co-found the Colored Women's Christian Association in 1896, which served the Baltimore community in uplifting black people in education, employment, and I served as president until my death in 1915.